Ron Rivera says Dyami Brown can put his head down and go. But what can he do that my toddler can't? All that and more today on the Dynasty newsletter. I'm your host, Adam Wilde, joined by my co-host, Chris Allen. Chris, in all seriousness, can we talk about Dyami Brown's dynasty value? Because he seems to be rising for what? I mean, I don't know. I don't know why he seems to be a hot topic lately, but I've looked more into it, and I can't seem to move him up my ranks much from where we had him. What was that, a month ago already?
Yeah, I think somewhere in there. And well, I think part of the reason that a lot of folks are excited about Dyami Brown and his possible role within the Washington offense is because that is the offense that we're most excited about, I think, when it comes to looking at the NFC East.
Mm-hmm.
We're excited about the Cowboys, don't get me wrong. Dallas Truthers, don't come at me. I've been drafting Dak Prescott as much as possible in any of the weapons associated with that offense. Same thing with the Jalen Hurts Truthers. Don't come at me. Also excited about them as well. But the Washington offense is still one of those offenses that we want to see what can happen when you pair good pass catchers in Terry McLaurin, Logan Thomas, now Curtis Samuel back with Ron Rivera, and Scott Turner as well. And then now they add in this third wide receiver that we know that could really help to unlock that passing game. Because one of the guys that they've had playing outside with them beforehand that really
like Kelvin Harmon,
and Gandy Golden. We'll see if he comes back at some point this offseason. But I think Dyami Brown brings that added level of speed and also physicality, reading through some of the work that folks like Matt Harmon has done regarding his outlook in terms of being able to beat man press coverage. He does excel on those deep and intermediate routes, which is something that I think is perfect for that offense because we already know what Terry McLaurin can do in the short and intermediate areas of the field. We know what Logan Thomas can do. And now you pair that with a guy that can clear out most of those routes with Brown. And then on top of all that, I mean, and the icing on that cake is now they have a quarterback that can unlock that entire personnel package with Ryan Fitzpatrick. When was it? 2 years ago when he was in Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay was number one in terms of deep ball passing. Now it's a mixture of both him and Jameis. But we saw it when he was down in Miami. Same deal. Tua comes out, Ryan Fitzpatrick comes in, and then that entire offense gets unlocked. We're seeing Mike Gesicki come down with deep ball passes in the end zone. I mean, Preston Williams, for a time, before he got injured, that was still a thing. So I think that he's one of those guys that I don't think we might be overvaluing at this point just because we're hearing that's the only person we're hearing about, right? We're not hearing stuff about Terry McLaurin, but we know that he still exists. We're not hearing stuff about Logan Thomas because we know that he's still going to be part of the offense. Curtis Samuel, obviously. We know what he can do part of that within that offense. But we'll talk about Antonio Gibson here in a little bit. But I think that's why folks are most excited about it because we're excited about that entire offense. I mean, just a complete 180 flip from Alex Smith. I mean, all respect to Alex and coming back from the injury, but we knew that it was going to be a dink and dunk offense with Smith being at the helm of it. And so now, again, when you see that aggressive nature with Ryan Fitzpatrick now being at the under center, that's what we want to see. We want to see it go from third in terms of pass attempts of 5 air yards or less. I think it was fourth in terms of passes of at the line of scrimmage or behind. I mean, that's what Alex Smith was when he was active between weeks 10 and 14 last year. So now you get Ryan Fitzpatrick, and we can be excited about all these pieces. But I think Brown is just the one that we're hearing the most about at this point, other than Gibson.
Yeah, but my question is, what is Dyami Brown doing right now to warrant now? All right, so let's not straw man here. Where's the hype coming from? My hype is coming from drafting best ball right now and seeing Dyami Brown going significantly higher than his counterparts that were drafting ahead of him in Dynasty. And why do I really care about that? I care about that because as much as we preach you have to be patient with wide receivers, people are not patient with wide receivers. They're not patient with anybody. I mean, some people swear that they play Dynasty with a 7-year window, a 5-year window, even a 3-year window. Yeah. If your guy produces in year one, his value's going up. If Dyami Brown really outproduces Kadarius Toney, Amari Rodgers, Amon-Ra St. Brown in year one, he's going to be valued higher than them. There's no one out there that's going to say, well, I had a better pre-draft rank on Kadarius Toney, so I'm going to stick with my guy because I need to be patient. Would that be the smart thing to do? Probably, but that's not what dynasty owners really do in the real world. So my question is, if he's being drafted ahead of those guys in best ball and he's getting the hype, he's getting the buzz, has he really done anything to warrant that? Because we knew he had that fit when he was drafted there. I mean, I thought you were alluding to his competition earlier, not who played outside last year. And it was Cam Sims, Steven Sims, Kelvin Harmon. Like Dyami Brown's the three. Absolutely. He really doesn't have much competition for the role at all. But we knew that when they took him in the third round. So that doesn't change much. And then just look at it from ADP perspective. Who are you going to put him in front of? I mean, I want to put him in front of Kadarius Toney because I want to put everyone in front of Kadarius Toney. But Kadarius Toney was a first-round pick.
You need to reconcile this hate of Kadarius Toney, man.
It's not really Kadarius Toney. It's Dave Gettleman, I would say. But I think my point is I'm not even going to put him over Kadarius Toney as much as I think that Dyami Brown. I thought that he was a fantastic third-round pick. You're not getting him in the third round now. But even if you want to take him, what I think that we ended up, or maybe it was just me saying that I'll take Kadarius Toney over Amon-Ra St. Brown. Unfortunately, it's just when you have that much of a disparity in draft capital and pair it with the fact that Amon-Ra St. Brown's offense is probably going to be terrible, even though he gets a ton of targets. I don't think it's worth it. So if you want to argue between Dyami Brown and Amon-Ra St. Brown, you're probably in the same ballpark there, right?
Yeah, I think thereabouts. And I'm looking at our staff rankings, our dynasty staff rankings right now on Footballguys, footballguys.com. And it looks like we've got Dyami is at wide receiver 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Wide receiver 12. So right after Amari Rodgers. So it's Amon-Ra St. Brown, Amari Rodgers, Dwayne Eskridge, and then Brown. And then after that, Nico Collins, Josh Palmer, Tylan Wallace, and Tutu Atwell.
That's what I was going to bring up was Dwayne Eskridge. I think that's the conversation we need to have. Very similar players. As much hype as the Washington offense is getting, and probably rightfully so. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick is certainly going to air it out, and Dyami Brown is a deep threat. I would argue that Seattle's offense is significantly better. Is it significantly better in neutral passing rate? No, it's probably going to be worse in neutral passing rate, but they're going to have far more scoring opportunities.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that we do have to consider is that, so let's say right now, Brown's value rises. Great. And then on top of that, Brown winds up hitting in year one. Also good. But why would he have hit? Is it because of his talent? Or is the perspective going to be, is it because he was tied to Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's not in the long-term plans for Washington?
Who might not be there, you're right. And then you've got yourself a sell opportunity. So that's a good point. I mean, if you want an early riser that you can flip, which doesn't work. It doesn't really work with rookie wide receivers. But
yeah, because I think a lot of folks will probably see this one coming.
Right. But in theory, I mean, it's really hard to flip rookie wide receivers because people understand Ryan Fitzpatrick's going to leave. It's a lot easier with like rookie running backs that find themselves in strange situations. I didn't want to trade James Robinson, but the people who did recommend changing him, it was warranted and it worked out for them. So it's easier for rookie running backs that find themselves in precarious situations that lead to success to flip those guys. It'd be hard to flip Dyami Brown, even if he outproduces Eskridge, but that is a good point. I mean, if you're holding the bag with Dyami Brown and he really comes on strong, and then you lose Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's probably going to be the reason that Dyami Brown comes on strong as the deep threat in Washington, you might want to look at trading him for some value. I mean, even if you get a pick upgrade in the second next year.
Right. And that's what I'm trying to think of, like, I'm assuming that it's just for this season and this season only that Fitzpatrick is going to be a part of the Washington football team. I don't really even think, and I'm pulling up his contract information right now. It looks like, it's just for the 1-year deal. He'll be an unrestricted free agent in 2022. So really, you've got this 1 year in order for a guy like Fitzpatrick to highlight the skill that Brown brings to that offense. And then afterwards, we don't even know what's going to happen, because as good as that offense looks right now, do we really see them being in a position after the 2021 season to get a quarterback?
Right. That was my next point.
Yeah. I mean, are they going to be in a position to get a guy like a Spencer Rattler or anybody like that? And I just don't think so.
I almost feel like they put themselves in a difficult situation having brought Fitzpatrick in, because they've certainly made themselves in the conversation for winning the East, and
could that defense, absolutely.
That defense is fantastic, maybe the best defensive line in the league. And then you've got a productive offense now, and you basically bought yourself out of an early draft pick at this point.
Right.
They're not going to the Super Bowl, right? So they might get themselves a playoff win, and then they've got an even worse draft position. So that's just a odd situation they put themselves in, now that I think about it. Exciting for us, though.
Yeah, I think it makes it exciting for us, and we'll see how that entire squad winds up working out, like over this season. And I wanted to pull up, let's see, for a division winner. I'm over at DK Sportsbook right now just to get a better feel for what the odds are. And actually, they are second in line. So Dallas Cowboys are at plus 125 to win the division. Washington Football Team is at plus 260 right behind them.
Oh, I don't mind that at all.
Right. So if they're thinking that there's a fairly decent chance they can even make the playoffs, then really they are pulling themselves farther and farther out of contention to get a quarterback in 22.
Yeah, there's almost no way that I don't think they're a bottom 5 roster whatsoever.
No.
I mean, Kid Washington played themselves into the bottom 5. Maybe the Washington in the past. I don't think Ron Rivera is going to allow a team to play themselves into a top 5 draft position with the talent that he's got. Speaking of Washington football talent, we've got this quote from John Keim. Washington football team plans to use running back Antonio Gibson more as a receiver. They're looking to be more explosive on offense, having Gibson run more as a receiver. I had to remind myself prior to the show that Antonio Gibson was a wide receiver, and that we weren't certain what he got drafted for last year. Hard to imagine after seeing him come on relatively strong. Without context, he doesn't look like he had a fantastic rookie season. But when you factor in how often J.D. McKissic was targeted last year, that probably won't happen again. And just the fact that he missed a couple games to injury, hobbled a couple more games, and just came on late. I mean, a lot of those guys came on late. J.K. Dobbins came on late. Cam Akers came on late. Jonathan Taylor was there all year, but he had that weird, like, you get 15 scripted whatever. The first 15 touches are scripted or something like that from Frank Reich, and then you don't see him anymore. So I guess all those guys kind of came on late, and you have to add context. But Antonio Gibson was pretty fantastic to finish out the year, and to see him receiving more, and more so McKissic receiving less, is a good sign for his value.
I think so too. And that's one of the things that I'm trying to at least keep in context when I'm projecting for the 2022 season, because you're absolutely right. Gibson, coming out of college, 33 total attempts at Memphis. I mean, think about that. And from the way he was deployed at Memphis to his first year in Washington, almost a complete flip. And then now it's good to hear about him being possibly used more in the passing game, because that was a concern. And given his ADP at this point, I mean, not even talking about redraft, I mean, how are we valuing him in Dynasty at this point? I mean, if we're looking at running backs, again, referring back to our staff rankings here over at Footballguys, not even, so let's see, look at Dynasty rankings real quick. Where is Gibson? Where do we have Gibson at? Gibson at RB13 as of right now in our football staff, Footballguys staff.
Where's Najee Harris?
Right below him. DeAndre Swift at 11, Aaron Jones at 12, Gibson, Harris, and then Josh Jacobs at 15. So
interesting.
But we want not just the running back carries, we also want those receptions to go with it. And we know that he can do it, obviously.
Yeah, played the position.
Right, but we're just wondering what J.D. McKissic's role is going to be within that offense. I think it was more geared towards, and as I mentioned earlier, with Alex Smith being a part of that offense last season, the number of times that he was passing at or behind the line of scrimmage, it benefited a guy like McKissic. Whereas if you actually do want to deploy a running back as a receiver, having him run actual routes versus him doing just the casual dump offs that Alex Smith was prone to do, I think that speaks more to Gibson's skill set and what he can do on the field. So I think it's wheels up for a guy like Gibson. Now, do I think from a dynasty standpoint, is he going to take over Aaron Jones, DeAndre Swift, Zeke Elliott, the three guys that are ahead of him in our staff rankings? No, but I think it solidifies his value at that, especially at that point, because regardless of who the quarterback is going to be, considering we were just talking about Ryan Fitzpatrick earlier not being in the long-term plans for Washington, if Gibson shows that he has the capability to be both that runner between the tackles, showed that in his rookie season, he can now get bumped up to even a 7, 8, 9% target share within offense, which is about what Cam Akers can do. Then it doesn't matter who the quarterback is at that point for me. He's getting that volume that should keep him in the top 12 dynasty rankings for at least the next few years.
You mentioned those guys. So Zeke and Aaron Jones in particular, I want to talk about because I have this internal conversation with myself all the time about running back, whether it's age or contract. And I lean towards it being contract. So you're talking about two guys, and Aaron Jones and Ezekiel Elliott, that have pretty solidified contracts. However, I highly doubt that you could trade Zeke straight up for Cam Akers. You could not trade Aaron Jones straight up for Antonio Gibson. So you mentioned could he pass those guys? I think that you could see Ezekiel Elliott finishing what's probably running back 7, and he's still going to drop in Dynasty ADP. Same for Aaron Jones. You're going to see him finish top 10, probably still going to drop in Dynasty ADP because you have to think about all these guys coming up behind him. Cam Akers.
Right. And he'll have another year on him, and like another year touches and all that.
And so those are the kind of guys where you need to start thinking, if they're on the roster, are they going to be your Derrick Henrys that you ride out because you're not trading them for their value? Or are they going to be guys that you get rid of now? I mean, Mixon's had an injury-riddled sort of career, but he falls into that same category as guys going into their, 6th year with solidified contracts. But he's going to drop an ADP just based off age, regardless of what he does this year. So I think I told you I sent Mixon and Fant for Jonathan Taylor and Robert Tonyan, which looks like a lateral move that doesn't matter right now, but just based on age, regardless of what they do. Now, Jonathan Taylor still has to have a productive season, but by no means does he have to outscore Mixon in order to be significantly more valuable. I mean, in that case, he already is. But you just brought me to a point where you're right. These guys have these guys, and Aaron Jones and Ezekiel Elliott are going to have these productive years this year, next year, and they're still going to get passed up by guys like Antonio Gibson's in a position to leapfrog quite a few guys this year. You're even going to struggle soon to rank Christian McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook that high. So I sold Christian McCaffrey what looks like low twice this offseason. And it's not going to look low next year because it just doesn't matter with the age with these guys. It doesn't matter how well they're producing. So it's interesting. I think we've got a change of the guard coming up, and I think Antonio Gibson's going to be a part of the changing of the guard. Now, I don't think people are certain what McKissic's going to be doing this year, because while J.D. McKissic has essentially fallen off the map after being a mid RB2 last year,
thereabouts,
you still don't have Gibson having that meteoric rise like someone like Cam Akers. So how is McKissic not getting drafted, but Antonio Gibson's still outside the top 12?
I mean, 28, 29-year-old running back. I don't think he's good. I think he'll be a free agent after this season.
Right.
And so if we're attaching the narrative that his value was tied to the targets he received from a quarterback that's not on the roster anymore, then I think everybody is more quick to just dismiss McKissic and just say, all right, well, he's just a guy, and I can get just a guy almost anywhere. That's
I'm 100% with you. I don't think that anybody should be drafting McKissic, but my point is, if McKissic's value was almost entirely tied to Alex Smith and Alex Smith is gone, it seems like Antonio Gibson could be a few spots higher pretty comfortably.
Possibly. I don't see why not. I think it's just more of the hype is around because there's only so many assets that you would really want to invest in that particular team.
Mm-hmm.
So my thought is if everybody's already looking at all the wide receivers, Logan Thomas, Antonio Gibson, that's five. That's five skill players like right there. So really, how much do we think the Washington football team, that offense, is going to make a step forward this season? So why invest in that guy when we've already got at least five guys that we know are going to be a larger part of that offense?
Yep. And for the record, I think that Antonio Gibson is in a safe speculative ADP to where you don't lose too much if he's not the next Christian McCaffrey, not the next Dalvin Cook.
Sure.
However, the speculation that he could be one of those guys has him right around that spot. My point is that's we don't do vacated targets here, but if you're changing the entire offense, then and predicating it around a receiving role for Antonio Gibson, who was already a productive rusher, I don't see why he couldn't be in the conversation for top 12 overall assets.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of top 12 overall assets, we have this blurb. Just the Giants won't rush Barkley back. I've even heard the term pitch count tossed around for the beginning of the season, which I don't think that that hasn't scared anyone off in redraft, so it's not going to do anything to anyone at Dynasty. So what do you think about Saquon's Dynasty outlook based off of his early season production?
I don't think it changes all too much from a Dynasty perspective. He's the RB4, RB5, like somewhere in there.
And he was the consensus RB1 before injury.
Right.
And CMC kind of took it from him, but.
Right. So, and I understand why folks would have some concern, but this is still a running back coming off of a fairly decent, a fairly significant knee injury, actually one that required like an additional cleanup procedure to be done like later on, if I'm not mistaken. So
I believe you're right.
So, I'm not sure why folks are surprised at this. Like why in May, June, that that the team wants to be as cautious as possible with their best running back that's on that squad as of right now, and one of their primary contributors to that offense. To say nothing about the wide receivers, Saquon Barkley has been for the past couple of seasons like their main guy. So right. I'm not too terribly concerned about it because, to be quite honest, I didn't think that he was going to be 100% healthy throughout the entire season anyway, because it's going to, he tore it in when? Was it end of September, early October?
I think he got 4 games in, so it would have had to been around then.
Yeah. So for him to be available to play in week 1, he was not going to be 100% healthy anyway. Mm-hmm. So I think it makes some sense for the team to take this cautious approach. And if that does involve a pitch count to start the season, okay, fine. But then the expectation would be that he takes over and completely starts to dominate touches as he used to a couple of seasons ago. So what's there to be concerned about afterwards? I'm not sure.
So if there's a pitch count in consideration, are we investing any in Devontae Booker?
I don't see why not. A guy to pick up on the back end of your roster. Look at what Wayne Gallman wound up doing throughout the rest of the season afterwards. And now with the improvements that they made along the offensive line, improvements to the defense, which should give them at least a couple more shots on offense. Makes sense to me in order to take a shot at him. Especially if you have one of the deeper roster, like that type of format in Dynasty, he should be a guy that you keep on the back end of your roster.
Sure. And he's actually a pretty solid running back by all accounts. So, if the pitch count works out early, there's no reason not to stick with it. Although it's Jason Garrett, and I don't expect him to do anything of much intelligence.
Well, yeah, but I would think that if Saquon does wind up going down again, that running game is going to be quite vanilla afterwards. Mm-hmm. Fairly basic. So even if you do wind up getting 10 plus touches from Booker, those are 10 plus touches that you're not going to get from any other running back on the back end of your roster. So why not?
Yep. And before we start talking about other rotational running backs, we'd be remiss not to remind you that we have the early bird special going on over at footballguys.com. Can't miss it. Orange button. Just go to the footballguys.com website. Look for the orange button that says subscribe, and subscribe now for the early bird special. It's not going to last forever. So you go over there, hit the orange button, early bird special, subscribe, and we'll do the work. You do the winning. And hopefully Tevin Coleman's doing the winning in this Jets running back room.
No.
I have a lot of shares.
No.
So Connor Hughes from The Athletic reports that the Jets have been rotating running backs Michael Carter, Tevin Coleman, and Ty Johnson with the starters during OTAs. No Michael P. Ryan love. What do you think about that?
That actually kind of surprised me that he was the one that was kind of getting snubbed at least out of that particular quote. I don't know if things are going to change over the next week or so, but I thought that P. Ryan showed at least the most versatility towards the back end of the season. Ty Johnson seemed more of like the guy that they would bring in goal line, short yardage situations. But P. Ryan, I thought, showed enough as both a runner and a pass catcher, not a ton to say that they had a ton of opportunities in order to do that. But I thought he had enough versatility to at least work in the mix with Coleman and with Carter and all that. So I was kind of surprised that that was how, at least that's the way that it seemed to look like after reading that particular blurb. But who knows with the Jets? I think for me, it's more about I would rather invest. I mean, we've already had plenty of conversations about Michael Carter. You're still going to have to sell me. I will fight you to the death on Tevin Coleman. I can't do it. I can't do it with him anymore. But I think it's still more about what can Carter bring to that offense than anything else.
Well, it's a Robert Saleh coach team, multiple connections to the 49ers, multiple connections to Tevin Coleman specifically. So we're looking at a rotational running back room. Probably not going to get as much volume for any of the guys that we want to get volume from. Like you said, LaMichael P. Ryan is getting snubbed. I mean, I'm pretty sure people are still drafting him in best ball to this day. So it just goes to show we have no idea. So to take the veteran of the group in Tevin Coleman, who has ties to the team, who has been, I wouldn't say a productive running back in his career. He has had a productive year, but he has definitely shined in the few times that he's been healthy. Just to take Tevin Coleman so later, keep him at the back end of your dynasty roster and get 1-2 starts out of him. It's not a bad idea when we're talking about I had Kendrick Bourne for 4 years before he finally signed in New England. So it's not that hard to keep a guy on the back end of your roster. I just don't think that I would be surprised if Tevin Coleman led the team in touches because I'd be surprised that he was healthy enough to do so.
I think
that's about it.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, right? You're not trying to, like, I don't think, let's say if Michael Carter were to get injured or even if Ty Johnson got injured, it's going to be the Tevin Coleman show for like the entire season.
Right.
I think it's more of a rotational thing. It's more of he winds up starting maybe a few games. You get 4, 5, 6 weeks of RB2 production out of him, and then you call it good. Because he's 28, 29 years old.
Yeah, turning 28, I think.
So turning 28. So I think for where he's at in his career, and I mean, you make good points on the connection to the current coaching staff, his understanding of the offensive scheme. All that makes sense. So like we were just talking about with Devonta Booker, like most folks would be trying to link or pick up any of the backups or the folks that would be in line for that production should the starter go down. Coleman has to be one of the guys that you're going to be targeting either out on the waiver wire or maybe throw-ins and trades or something like that so you can be able to capture that RB2 production. So should any of the guys in front of him go down.
Right, absolutely. I mean, I think that the player you want is Michael Carter, and everybody knows that. I mean, he's infinitely more valuable than Tevin Coleman in Dynasty Best Ball Redraft. Totally fine. And you're taking him with the prospect of getting, real volume. However, I just don't think there's going to be real volume there for any of them. And I mean, LaMichael P. Ryan and Ty Johnson are not players that you really want to hang your hat on anyways. So we shouldn't have been really worried about them in the mix. I do think it's a two horse race with Tevin Coleman and Carter, but it's going to come down to health. And we also have to remember Michael Carter was a 4th-round pick, okay? He wasn't even in our rookie draft when we did the top 3.
Right.
We didn't even get to include him. Now, of course, we would have taken him at like 206, but it's just you can't guarantee anything for Michael Carter. And we've seen time and time again, even Jonathan Taylor doesn't get the first crack at running back duties.
Sure.
To say that Michael Carter is going to get the first crack at running back duties is just I'll go as far as to say naive. It's probably not going to happen. Now, he could be impressive enough in camp, 100%. I think Michael Carter's a quality running back, could be impressive enough in camp. I get that. But you can't just hand a 4th-round running back the lead role because you want to. And that's where my Tevin Coleman love comes from, is just that if you have to look at the 4 of them, and this guy's been in the league for 6 years, you give the ball to Ty Johnson. I don't know.
I don't know. But I know that especially after the pick was made, everybody looks at the current players on that roster.
Yep,
they're all washed. We want to go ahead and assume the role for a guy like Michael Carter. So it makes sense that's how the hype train like really pulled out of the station.
Yeah, double count.
Right.
Yep.
But we will have to inject some reality in this situation, which is kind of what that blurb is indicating, that it is going to be a rotation. Now, will Carter run off with the job at some point during the season?
Hopefully.
Totally within the realm of possibility. But at least to start off the season, it is going to be a committee and not just a 2-man committee. That's going to be like a 3 to 4-man committee from the way that it sounds.
Maybe they're going to have San Francisco's 6-man committee.
Oh, please don't do this to me.
So we've had no news. We've had no post June 1st trades. So I'd imagine that we're going to have a pretty big show next week. There's got to be stuff happening after this after these post June 1st trades, but this week is going to have to be a short one. I wanted to take the time to just mention some of the stuff that's going on. For starters, please subscribe to the actual newsletter on Football Guys, because that's where we take all our blurbs from. So owner Joe Bryant puts together the newsletter on a daily basis, sends it out to your email. You get a nice table of contents on everything that you want to receive for that day. So if you only care about your team and your team's not listed, you don't have to read for that day. But if you're reading through those blurbs and you wonder how that's affecting your dynasty rosters, your trade decisions, you're going to hear it from us on our Wednesday show. So we work hand in hand with the actual Football Guys newsletter. So I wanted to make that clear. And then I just want to kind of shout out some of the other shows. So we have Dave Kluge. He's out there Klugeing people, working with Troy King on the Mailbag Show right before us on Wednesdays, and you can interact with that live. You've got the 2-point stance with Warren Carpenter and Dave. Of course, you have the flagship show, the Audible. Always catch that on this here Football Guys TV. And the Dynasty Show, with Chad Parson and Jordan McNamara.
Yep.
I have to go check those guys out too. So especially if you're trying to get Dynasty content, we've got the Dynasty News. They get to go into the weeds a little bit more. So subscribe to the Football Guys TV YouTube channel, and you're going to get all those shows.
Oh, yeah. And, of course, the addition of, with Troy coming in, he had to add in his TikTok. Yeah, so go ahead and check that out. My man is getting wild.
Crazy. I love it.
Yeah, on TikTok. So definitely go and check him out on there as well. So we're expanding to all platforms with the FBG family.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we have an Instagram too, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, check us out over at Instagram too.
Awesome. All right. Well, subscribe, rate, review, and thank you guys for coming out. We'll talk to you next time.
Peace.